Because WoW Classic is perceived to be this like super social, hyper social game. But you know what? In some ways it's completely solo. Because you can do everything on your own. You can go and do quests and go and gather stuff, right? And you don't have to engage with group content whatsoever. Whereas in Guild Wars 1, you kind of have to engage in group content. I just thought that was such a fascinating thing, because I kind of feel the same way about Guild Wars 2. The game is almost too fair with the way it is. Like, you know, if you're playing a DPS in a raid, right, and your quickness provider's kind of fucking up, well, congrats. It actually doesn't matter how well you play, you're going to have a bad time. And it's the same thing with everything else, right? Like, if your DPS players are doing super well, well, do you see what I mean here, right? Yeah, but the thing is that, weirdly enough, PUGs, I used to think this. I used to think that PUG groups optimize for the safest builds. This is actually not true.
I heard we're talking about commanders or something today.
Yeah.
Topic?
Yes. Yes!
Nice.
Yes!
Okay. I'm ready. I am mentally prepared.
I think it's going to be a series of Snebtimes.
A series?
Oh, yes.
Should we explain our new methodology?
Maybe we should.
Our new attitude?
Yes, I think that's a really good place to start, actually, when it comes to talking about this. Because we have had a bit of a revelation, in fact, with some of the stuff. Do you want to go into it? Do you want to explain the context?
I'll just kind of start with... Yeah, I'll just kind of start with my thoughts, and then maybe we can build from there.
Yeah.
I think that Teapot and I, obviously, we both care a lot about the game and a lot about the community. And we both have sort of a proclivity or a tendency or a desire to really dive deep into problems and really discuss them and talk them out and rationalize them and argue them and whatnot. And our intent with that is to try to help the community, right? And say, okay, these are problems. Are they really problems? Are they as big of a problem as we think they are? How deep does the problem go? Where's the foundation of the problem? Where does the problem start? Who's primarily at fault here? How do we tackle the issues? And so in diving deep into these things, I think sometimes it comes off as very negative.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about really hard issues and maybe it sounds like we're complaining or that we're unhappy or that we're whining or whatever. And that's not what we want. Our goal and our objective with those conversations is to inspire change and to help people understand what the solutions are. And so Teapot and I have discussed this a long time. There's been a little bit of frustration because we're like, this isn't doing what we want it to do. Like our intention is this, but that's not the result. And so we're sort of shifting our focus and thinking, okay, maybe we don't dive in and like talk about these problems, because maybe in some ways talking about the problems and spending so much time and dwelling on them, maybe all that does is just highlight the problems and bring people down. What if we focus entirely on the solutions to the problems? How do we fix things? How do we keep things positive? For example, the conversation that we're going to have today.
Exactly. Yeah, this is something that over the past few conversations where we've kind of really hit some pretty controversial topics, I'd say. Yeah, you put it perfectly there. We're just not really getting the results that we want to see. We want to address these issues, but I don't think it's actually super effective to basically say, well, the problem exists, but there's a lot of misinformation about it, and it's not as bad as you think, right? Doesn't come off super well, I think. It doesn't really work. So yeah, we're just going to instead just fix the problem. Easy.
Yeah. So the style of our conversation will probably be quite a lot different, because before where maybe we're a bit flippant at times, or it's kind of two friends talking about a thing, and our experience is very different than a lot of other people's experience, and I think that that's sort of hard to express and dive into in a short period of time. What I mean by this is that Teapot and I both play the game forever, right? So we obviously have some biases and some viewpoints that other people may not share. And it's hard when you are a veteran of the game and you've played forever to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's just starting the game. Because the new player experience to me if I go and just try to make a new character, it's always going to be affected by my current experience, which is the knowledge that I already have. And so it's very difficult for us to go and say, oh, you should just do X, when, you know, that might be harder than we think sometimes. And I think no matter what, there will always be some criticism about, you know, bias or how maybe we don't understand. Rather than talking about these problems and fixating on the problems, let's talk about how to have a better gaming experience, how to be a better community citizen, how to tackle challenges and roadblocks, how to essentially just be a better gamer, and to just get the most out of your experience and have the most fun you possibly can.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And that's what we're going to attempt to do. Did you...
That sound pretty good, actually.
Did you see... on quite an old video, so maybe you didn't see it. Wooden Potatoes' video on WoW Classic versus Guild Wars 1.
Oh, boy. It could have been so long ago that I don't remember it, but I recall that being a video.
Yeah. I loved that video. It was such a good video, actually. I think it was super insightful. Because you know what he said about Guild Wars 1? And this is so interesting, considering the way people perceive these games, by the way. Especially WoW Classic. He said, I think he's totally right, and I think you could actually apply a very similar criticism to Guild Wars 2, in my opinion. Guild Wars 1 is too team-oriented. Every piece of content is team-reliant, and you're incredibly reliant on your allies in that game. Very reliant. Whereas in WoW, you can level up and do all the quests completely solo, right? And yeah, you have henchmen in Guild Wars 1, but it's not really the same, right? The ridiculous thing is they were pretty shit. They were actually pretty crappy, to be honest, at the start of Guild Wars 1 anyway. That kind of got fixed with heroes, but, you know, yeah. That has really stuck with me. I thought that is actually a really, really fucking good point. Because WoW Classic is perceived to be this like super, super social, hyper social game. But you know what? In some ways, it's completely solo. Because you can do everything on your own. You can go and do quests and go and gather stuff, right? And you don't have to engage with group content whatsoever. Whereas in Guild Wars 1, you kind of have to engage in group content. Because, you know, missions. You got to do missions. You got to do... you have to do that to get through the story. You don't really have a choice. I just thought that was such a fascinating thing, because I kind of feel the same way about Guild Wars 2. The game is almost too fair with the way it is. Like, you know, if you're playing a DPS in a raid, right, and your quickness provider's kind of fucking up, well, congrats. It actually doesn't matter how well you play, you're going to have a bad time. And it's the same thing with everything else, right? Like, if your DPS players are doing super, super well, well, do you see what I mean here, right?
Yes, I think I kind of understand. Actually, man, everyone's going to go classic, you know,
classic
mark
Sneb.
The bingo card. Yeah. I'll give a sports analogy. Basketball. You can have somebody who's just a dominant player that can honestly carry your team to a lot of wins. I would argue that Luka Doncic is that player for the Dallas Mavericks. Just hard, like super good player, right? Mm-hmm. Contrast for volleyball, you have to rely on your teammates. It doesn't matter how good you are as a player. You can be the Luka Doncic of volleyball, but who cares? Because that's not how the game works.
Yeah.
If you have players on your team that aren't, you know, that people are going to target because their defense is weak or whatever, then they're going to get targeted. Mm-hmm. So it's more about the entire team. No individual can excel to the point where they really hard carry a team in volleyball. It would be my argument. But in other sports, it's more possible. Yeah. I kind of felt that way about Guild Wars 2. Very much the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that way about Guild Wars 2, and I think that can actually be really frustrating to deal with, especially in PvP. Yeah. And especially seeing as, of course, there is that variance now. Like, you know, you'd have to be a fool to say that, you know, you can't get completely screwed by matchmaking. You can absolutely get completely screwed with matchmaking. Because you can absolutely just have players who are obviously, you know, very, very new to the game, in inexperienced games, which just completely ruins them and skews them massively, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think those two things combined do lead to a pretty frustrating experience, I think, for all players involved, really. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, oh boy, I think this actually leads into a lot of issues that people experience with random groups, right? Because they feel like they can't have an impact.
Yeah.
Or that they're sort of helpless to make something happen. And I completely empathize with that because of what we just spoke about. It's very challenging for players to go, yeah, I can be the change, when they either don't know what the change is that needs to occur.
Yep.
Or their success is so predicated on other people understanding something. This is why Wings 5, 6, and 7 are way less played than the other Wings.
Because they have hard fail states on certain people. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so you're more reliant on other people. And maybe this is weird, but it's kind of why I enjoy Wings 1 to 4 more, is because I know that even with a high variance in skill level, if I take
you can
4
hard
people
carry.
that really, you can be insanely impactful on your team. And that honestly feels really good. Even if you're not on the strongest team, having those clutch wins or those close moments where you're rezzing people, or where you're dealing with mechanics and preventing people from dying, it feels really good. The problem lies when you're in those sorts of situations, but there's nothing you can do to impact whether you win or lose.
Yeah. I completely feel this 100% actually. And if I look at the raid wings that I really enjoy, especially when it comes to pugging, it's always the bosses where I can just say, you know what? If this goes to shit, I log on Heel Scourge and we win next pull, right? No matter what. Those are the ones that I go, yeah, I'm going to play that. It's why I'm like, oh, do I really want to pug that Doom? I'm not sure about that one. Because you're like, well, I mean, if there's, you become irrelevant the moment someone can't do green. Right, it's over. And you can't do all 3 of them. If you could do all 3 of them, it would be okay, but you can't. You can only do 1.
Yeah. I know that sometimes when I'm streaming like Wing 6 or something and I get to Kadim, I express a lot of frustration. And the reason is because I'll go, okay, I need somebody to do lamp, and no one will volunteer for it. And I'll say, I need somebody to do the mat tank, and no one will volunteer for it. And I say, I need somebody to do kiter then, and no one will volunteer for it. And I go, well, crap, I can do all of those roles, but I can't do all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So I need to rely on other people to be able to do it. And I think it's harder to learn those things because people are less likely to give you a shot, because you messing up sort of affects the entire team. So there's less opportunities to learn it, right? Because there's less opportunities to learn or to fail and still succeed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I completely understand that. That's a really good point. It really is. I think a lot of people are probably very frustrated by that because they just don't know what they can do to impact the team and really help.
You know what's actually tragic? There is an achievement for jumping over the shockwave on the Twilight Oasis Fractal 3 times in a row. The boss died too fast. It only cast 2.
Oh. That sucks. Yeah. Hey, how do we change the culture in Escort so that people will split the party and send like 3 people up to do the towers? How can we change this culture?
What's the culture right now?
Well, maybe it's different on EU. Most people will do tower chrono. So
really?
They send up or a mesmer. Yeah, they send up, like, you can watch right now. I'm watching the chrono's gonna go up.
Okay.
They're gonna like put down the portal.
Oh, okay, the portal.
Down,
oh no, I thought you meant like solo. I thought you meant like solo portal. I was gonna.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No. So, sometimes people will offer that on a Mirage, and they'll.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, people really learn, huh? That's crazy.
Yeah, no. I'm trying to convince people to do a split where you send 3 people up and everyone else stays down. You kind of like speed run through it.
Yeah. That's the speed run. So yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I actually think it's safer. I think that a lot of people mess up on the portals.
Yeah, but the thing is that weirdly enough, pugs. I used to think this. I used to think that pug groups optimize for the safest builds. this is actually not true. That's in the
no, not at all.
That's in the hierarchy of optimization, but what they optimize most for is group buildability every single time. And the more kind of responsibility that you have to hand out to multiple players, the less likely you are to ever see it pop up in a PUG group, right? And that's why I think you'll probably never really see this take off, because it essentially requires more players to do something, which makes it very unattractive for PUG groups.
I would agree with that. I think that's why people do it. So I think it'd be very hard to shift. But every time I've shown people how to do this, they are actually really excited about it, because it makes escort fun. Because otherwise, escort is basically, you know how if you make a doctor's appointment, you have to sit in the waiting room, and there's just sort of this unknown amount of time that you're going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's escort.
Yeah. Do you, are you aware of tent strat?
No.
Oh my god, I'm gonna. Oh, Sneb. The fact that people, I want you to know before I tell you this, it's very important that you understand that a lot of people actually did this strategy back in the day.
No way. Is this the one where everybody sits at the tent and they wait until all of the units and stuff are dead?
Until they've all spawned. Yeah. They've all spawned.
I am aware then.
Yeah. How do you feel about the fact that that used to be more common than you'd expect?
I think that's like a Sith legend. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that'd be very boring, but I can also understand why people would do it. It's kind of the same with Deimos range strat.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, dude.
It's not very fun to do, but you will get the kill.
What I loved about Deimos range strat is that it do you know, I think I've told this story before, right? So Deimos range strat was created as part of a sell strategy for the Deimos Heart by Yummy Sauce on NA. And he used to stream sales and basically get people to buy raids by watching his stream. And he accidentally created Deimos range strat because everyone saw this and they're like, whoa, this strat is insane. And they started doing Deimos range strat.
Huh. I actually didn't know that piece of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. He used to kite the oils on Dragon Hunter, specifically Dragon Hunter for an emergency block.
Wow.
Yeah, the F3. Crazy. That was absolutely
we're actually
wild.
going to execute range strat tomorrow when Skane Gang is playing with the devs.
Ah.
So.
Yeah, range strat is really interesting because in some ways I think you're absolutely right. It definitely does. You'll get the job done, right, if you do that. The weird thing to me about range strat is that it almost kind of teaches a lot of bad practice for raids. Specifically that it offloads all of the responsibility onto 3 people. Right, which kind of makes sense if you're optimizing for like kind of getting the job done. But I think it teaches a lot of really bad habits. And I think it's actually really horrible if you're learning the fight. If your tank is inexperienced, I think it's hell. If your hand kiter is inexperienced, it's hell. Because those players suddenly...
there's more opportunity for them to fail because they have to do more.
Yeah. So like range strat definitely is going to get the job done. Under the assumption though that the players you have... in those roles are pretty comfortable. Otherwise, it's going to be really unpleasant for them, I think, which is why I'm not a huge fan of range strat.
Yeah. I the whole point is that it offloads responsibility. Yeah. It's really the whole point. It is not necessarily a good way to practice and improve, but it is a good way to complete the content.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you have to ask yourself, what are your goals? If you don't really care about improving and you just want to guarantee the kill every time, then do range strat and more power to you. You will get the kill. It's a lot less risky, assuming that the people that are in key roles know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of empathizing with the poor tank and hand kiter here more than anything else. It's like I don't care. I'm not like going to be a bit of a snobby elitist and say, oh no, you must do it this way because this is the way that's going to help you get better at the game. I actually don't care about that. That's not my criticism of range strat. It's more that I'm just imagining a new player doing a training run and they're doing range strat Deimos and the poor tank is just going to have to tank for like 10 years while the boss gets chipped away, and the hand guider is just gonna have such a horrible time, right? Oh god, they have the hand guide for like twice as long as you normally would. It's like, it's horrible.
It's not very fun. That's my criticism. If I join a group and they say, actually, we're gonna do range strat, it's kind of 50-50 for me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's just not very fun, and other times I'm like, whatever, we'll get the kill, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I don't find it very engaging or interesting. But that doesn't mean that, you know, it's evil or anything.
Yeah. And I guess you could think about power mech on range strat Demos. That's crazy.
It actually would be so good.
That's crazy. What a crazy build. Now you can do your Staff Weaver as well. That's epic.